Here. It's a good crowd here tonight. I'm Jeremy Moss, State Senator for our area, joined by State Rep Jason Hoskins and State Rep Samantha Steckloff. We all collectively represent Southfield, and then in addition Lathrop Village and Southfield Township, and we go up and down Telegraph and represent a chunk of Oakland County here. So we have held these every month. I know there's some familiar faces, there's some new faces. We kind of just give an update to what's going on in Lansing and how the ongoings there impact us back home. So we'll kind of review the last month, maybe even preview the month ahead. I think the big topic that you probably maybe followed was the passage of the state budget that finally passed in the wee hours of the morning of whatever day it was. Friday, October 3rd, I think in the early morning of Friday, October 3rd. Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning. It was a ridiculous process, and I'm stating fact, but the fact has to come with some partisan realities. Is that we serve as Democrats. I'm in the majority in the Michigan Senate, and Representatives Hoskins and Steckloff are Democrats in the minority in the Michigan House. I have been a Democrat in the minority. I have been a Democrat in the majority. I have been a Democrat with a Republican governor. I have been a Democrat with a Democratic governor. This has been the most dysfunctional budget process by design. It was contrived, it was on purpose to kind of match the chaos of the federal government right now, because chaos is the tool that these people are using to govern with. When we need stability and predictability and ability to dialogue and negotiate and communicate with one another, they throw bombs, they pull the rug out, they move the goalposts, all to make chaos the tool to get what they want. And we held the line on so many things that are wins that we feel we are delivering for our community. So just kind of as a review, by law, we have to pass a balanced budget by June 30th every year, because the fiscal year starts October the 1st. And so we have to get everything ready, including our schools and our municipalities that receive state funding. They actually have to pass their balanced budget for the year on July 1st. So of course we should pass a budget by June 30th so that they know what they're dealing with for the year ahead. The Senate, again Democratic led, we passed all of our budgets by May. The House didn't even introduce their budgets until August. How are you going to pass a budget by June 30th when you don't even have a partner to work with on June 30th? So it was a long process to get to October 1st, and indeed on October 1st we did not pass a budget because the House did not agree. Not these folks, but the majority in the House did not agree to where the Senate was. So on October 1st we passed a continuation budget. So we continued the 2024-2025 budget for one more week, which gave us till October 7th to pass a budget. And finally we got the framework together on October 3rd. So there was no disruption of major services, which was a good thing. And actually we passed a budget with some really important measures that protected us against the federal cuts and the one big stupid bill, that boosted some important programs like RX Kids, which is a huge investment for pregnant women and infants in our state. So we've done a lot of good things. It just, the process was fraught with dysfunction. And it's a sad sign of things to come. This toxicity from DC has finally infiltrated into the state capitol. And it's just been very challenging and very dismaying to see people try to destroy our institutions for nothing. So that's my prelude to what we will go into, kind of the bottom line, the top lines of the budget. And we obviously can field questions as best as we can. So as you may know, there are two different types of committees you can serve on in the legislature. You can serve on policy-making committees, or you can serve on the budget committee. Rep. Hoskins and I serve on policy-making committees. Rep. Steckloff serves on the budget committee. I'm probably going to lean a little bit heavily on her to answer some of the detailed budget questions. Although I was in the room, I know what was passed. But I guess I'll kick it over to Rep. Hoskins to kind of give some of your thoughts, and then I want Rep. Steckloff to just do a deep dive into whatever you want to deep dive into.
Right. Sure, and I'm going to, because I certainly can go, I have some top lines too that, but Rep. Steckloff, I just want to really highlight her leadership in the budget process, because she was one, for the House Dems, she was one of the people in the room helping to negotiate this budget and helping to make it, quite frankly, a way better budget for our state, and something that was way more reflective of our values than what was initially introduced by the House. When we first started this process, and I can't remember if it was June or July, when the House Republicans passed a budget, and it was all cuts. It was cuts
April.
April?
February?
Time is an illusion.
very first
like it's,
March?
and
It was early March, yeah.
Yeah, March.
The one that was like 20 bill or something?
Yeah.
Just to back up, the reason that, so the House Republicans said we're going toward a shutdown in March. There's no reason to say we're going toward a shutdown for October 1st all the way back in March. So we are presenting a plan for an emergency budget because we know we're going toward a shutdown. So they just funded literally just very minuscule amounts of things in our budget, including cutting what, $5 billion? Or what was the number to education that was cut from their budget?
More than that.
So they passed this kind of ridiculous plan predicting that they were going to send us to a shutdown all the way back in March.
Yeah, and we passed also, that was our general fund budget, and we passed a school budget also in June, July. Again, time is an illusion. And that made cuts to very popular programs that many certainly of our constituents have been helping getting them through, like free breakfast and lunch in schools, transportation in schools, programs that help children with disabilities. All that was cut out of the budget, and we were able to get all that back into this budget that we just passed. A lot of these things are so critical to the state and so important to many of our constituents. And there's a lot of great things that we were able to get in this budget. I'll turn it over to Rep. Steckloff. There's something in there in particular that I wouldn't mind talking about too, dealing with transit. This is something that has always been very important to me, and we made a significant investment into transit with this budget. Also something that was not on any of our colleagues on the other side of the aisles. It wasn't on their list of priorities, but it was certainly on ours. But I could turn it over to Rep. Steckloff.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the offshots. So I serve on all appropriations committees, and this year has been very, very interesting. So we have some new people here, so I'm gonna go quickly through how the appropriations process is supposed to work, and then I'll go into what happened. So typically every year in February, budget season gets a kickoff with the governor coming in and presenting her budget. So it's the executive budget. So the House and the Senate appropriation members all meet, and the governor comes in, the budget team, the state budget director, Jen Flood, and they go over the governor's recommendation. So she's created her own budget by February. And then what happens is that kind of is the beginning of budget season. And so the Senate goes into their committees, the House goes into their committees. And typically, by March, the House has their own recommended budget, and the Senate has theirs. So the Senate will vote theirs out of the chamber, send it to the House. The House will then vote theirs out of the chamber, send it to the Senate. The House members vote no on the Senate's budget, and the Senate votes no on the House's budget, because that's what triggers conference. So once that's completed, the majority leader, the speaker, and the governor, and their appropriations lead, so the state budget director for the executive, the appropriations chair in both chambers, all get together and they decide how much is each department going to get. So we're seeing an education budget, we're going to put $300 million for this into this. They decide where that $80 billion is going to go. Some's restricted, some is general. There's kind of four types of dollars. There's your transportation dollars that are restricted. There's your school aid dollars that are restricted. There are your ongoing general fund dollars. Those are the best dollars. Those can be used for anything, and when I say ongoing, that means that program continues year after year. And then there's your one-time general fund dollars. So all that gets stipulated at the top. Once those numbers come down, the chairs of each one of those departments get into a room together and hash out the remaining parts of that budget. And it can be a pretty intense process, but that is then done by end of June. Sent again over to the House and the Senate, and we vote those budgets out by July 1st. That is not what happened this year. What happened this year is the governor did her thing, Senate did their thing, and then in March, the Speaker and the Republicans put out this, I think they called it a government shutdown contingency plan. So we knew in March that they were planning on going into a government shutdown. And
For no reason.
For no reason. And it took away 95% of the budget, including zeroing out the Attorney General, zeroing out this. So all of these departments got zeroed out. So for some reason, they decided to put together an education and an education-only budget, and I still think that was done after the July 1st deadline. I can't remember. I remember getting pulled into a room during the softball game. Yeah. So they did that, and then in August, they finally did their additional departments and got those out. And then there was a lot of heated, cheated, whatever. And then finally in October, end of September, they got in a room and the principals sent their stuff down to each department. But because this was so last minute, we had a very interesting situation going on. The entire time I've been in the legislature, each budget goes towards subcommittee, and then full committee, and then the floor. For example, the higher education budget, the one that I chaired, would go to my committee. My committee would have a few days to review, then we'd vote it out.
And a public hearing, so that public could get involved, could read it. It could be vetted by media, it could be vetted by citizens.
Yep, and that's when you go through if there's any amendments you want to be made. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times there's a substantial amount of amendments that are accepted. And then it goes to full appropriations.
The full committee.
Full committee. And then again, everyone gets to vote out each individual budget, like amendments and things like that. And then it goes to the floor. So you have quite a bit of time to review these budgets. Even if it happens like that, you still have at least a week to review everything. Well, it didn't go through any committees this year. It just went straight to the floor. And we were I remember being in caucus and they told us that, well, this was the Republican budget, never mind. So I'm trying to remember because it was also Yom Kippur that night and Jeremy and I after dinner raced up to the Capitol. So we got the budget around, I want to say 12:30, and then we voted it out at about 2 a.m. So that was the process, I think, trying to remember. So this is completely abnormal. There was a lot of tension on roads. That was kind of like the clinch pin this year, was do we have a roads budget? So we magically got something done. And this may have sounded like it was a quick, padded pass. We have been working on this road funding deal since March. I have been in the room with House Republicans, you're welcome, since March, trying to put together a road funding bill because we knew that we're in split government. Everyone had their own priorities. House Republicans, roads was their number one priority. They backed themselves into a corner, and we knew that nothing could get done unless the roads thing got done. So we were able to create a new roads plan, which brings in almost $2 billion a year, and that's going to go towards your local roads. It also has a ton of money into transit, so I don't want to take Jason's pride and joy away from him, but so he can go over transit. We're typically at about a $3 to $4 billion hole every year in those transportation dollars. So we created a new tax increase. So for those of you that are here, I'm really sorry, my name is on it. We raised the wholesale marijuana tax by 24%. Now your alcohol and your cigarettes, those are at a 32% wholesale tax. This was not necessarily, I should say this was not the tax I had given. We had about 13 to 15 other taxes that we have provided. But this is what the principals decided on. But what we got in return for this wholesale tax is pretty incredible. We got a Medicaid backfill for state dollars, SNAP backfill for those state dollars. We got universal breakfast and lunch for that tax increase, and we got a Democratic education budget for that increase. We're working on a lot of regulatory side, things that are in Senator Moss's committee right now. We did work a lot with the cannabis industry before this. We had a different tax that we were working on, which kind of stinks because they actually came to the table, and anyway. So we are working on a lot of regulatory side behind the scenes for them. So that's where you hear this marijuana increase. And I have to let you know, while tax increases are tough, it's much easier to get 140 people to vote on a sin tax than it is anything else. It's much easier. We had a ton of user fees out there, but this was what we could get done. But I need you to understand what was able to get back in return, because I know, especially with an oversaturated market, many people are nervous and scared, especially because who work in the marijuana industry. But I think it's very important that I explain what we got in return. Normally around this time of year, I'm providing a budget presentation. We don't have that yet ready because, well, we just passed the budget. So as soon as that is done, I will present the whole budget so you guys can have all of your questions answered. But because it's such a big budget, I didn't know if you had questions instead. How do you want to proceed?
So yeah, I think what we should is, so we just threw a lot at you, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot. We live it. It's a lot. So I think we can break it down into different categories. So process. I think we've all talked about the process. It was a mess. Are there any other lingering questions on the process? Our answer to every question will be, it was a mess. So process, yes.
I just want to know, last time we met, you talked about how the Speaker of the House would not bring up the topic of the budget. He wouldn't allow for it.
Yeah.
So what happened that he finally decided to do the right thing?
A deadline. We had to pass the budget. I think there were some big pressure points. There are some things that if they weren't funded by October 1st, it was going to cause calamity in our communities. I think the biggest pressure point were the free school meals.
Yes.
For our, we have universal free meals, regardless of zip code and school district and means. We don't want any student to be shamed in our state, so we have budgeted for breakfast and lunch is available for free for every public school student in the state of Michigan. And that's a big savings. It's a big savings to parents to not have to prepare meals for their kids, and saves on their grocery bills and their time, and it makes sure that they have the peace of mind that their kid is going to have a full belly, which will lead to a full mind. There were school districts, because we did not fund that at the start of the school year, who said on October 1st, this program ends, because we don't have the confidence that the legislature is going to continue that program. So that was a big pressure point. Medicaid, I think, was another big pressure point. Medicaid is a federal program, but it's administered through the state. A big chunk of our budget is shooting out Medicaid resources, funding, support, where it's needed in our communities. And if that budget wasn't passed, along with the cuts to Medicaid at the federal level, I think people were calling their legislators and saying, I don't know if I don't know if I qualify anymore, I don't know if I have a work requirement, I don't know if I'm getting something less than what I was getting. I think that was another big pressure point.
And just to add on to that too, hospitals too were also very concerned, because those Medicaid dollars actually help fund a lot of the hospitals. And there were hospitals certainly in rural areas that were saying, if we don't get this money, we will shut down. We are going to shut down whole departments if we don't get this money. the Michigan Health and Hospital Association put out something saying that this could cause, if they didn't pass a budget, it would cause 20,000 jobs. It would cost billions of dollars in economic devastation. The speaker didn't like that. These are, I think that too, hearing that, because in this area, in my district, for example, hospitals are the biggest employers. But we have such big hospital systems that we would have been fine in this area, but in the areas that are represented by a lot of the speakers' caucus, they were going to really feel the pain. They were, I mean, I had a meeting with the rural hospitals a week before the budget, and they were saying, we will not have money to be able to continue. So that was also something too, that I think he was feeling that pressure to really get into a room and negotiate.
So maybe to put a capstone on process, and you can take other questions. You can say, yeah, you say it.
We also started the year with a negative $3 billion. Okay, so we were already between the big beautiful bill, some of the corporate income tax that we would normally get in the state, and then the Medicaid dollars. We kind of started at this. We had to find $3 billion to begin with. So that's where a lot of issues.
So we'll do process. We can do a conversation on roads. We can do a conversation on marijuana, which is tied to roads, and then we can talk about some of the big wins in the budget. So let's capstone process. Yeah, do you have a?
One final question on process. So Republicans are out there saying, you know what, it took us this long to examine every little line item and look at every little nook and cranny. What I'm hearing is either A, that didn't happen, and that's just a bunch of BS, or did that happen?
We allowed them to have, okay, I'm going to be honest, this budget for the most part is a significantly Dem budget. I want to start by saying that, yeah, did we lose a lot? Absolutely, I'm not going to minimize that. But for the most part, this is a very Dem budget.
Yes.
So we're letting them have their talking points.
Yeah, so obviously the Republican majority wanted to go into a budget saying, look at all the things we cut.
Ghost jobs.
And Democrats go into a budget saying, look at all the places where we invested. So there are some reductions. There's some reductions in staff. So there's some certain positions and departments that have not been filled, and those positions have been eliminated as a result of not being filled. So they can go around and parade that they, reduced government, that they made cuts, but these are jobs that were not actually filled to begin with. I don't know if there were many other big cuts in the budget.
I mean, there's cuts to some preschool stuff, autism.
The autism
navigators.
Yep, which we're hearing about, and
Yeah,
it's challenging. Yeah.
random cuts left and
I
right.
was just going to ask you about autism. I read the article today. If I read it right, and I have a grandson that's autistic, that there's no funding, it was cut completely? And is it possible that can be restored?
There's still funding, it's just not through the Navigators program that we typically use.
And there's conversations about restoring that. There's
Yeah.
conversations about in a future budget, a mid-year budget, about restoring that particular program, because we're hearing about it from Democrats and Republicans alike. But this was something that, as the Republicans wanted to cut pieces of the budget, that this was one of the cuts that remained. So it's a very narrow program that is no longer going to be state-run. They still have private dollars that they work with, but we're talking about a mid-year budget of putting money back into that program.
Let's say mid-year is restored. And I'm not even sure how this is distributed, but what happens between the 6 months?
Well,
gonna be a new fight.
the state funding won't be there.
So we typically do a supplemental budget. We just didn't do one last year where we were supposed to either close out the books, or if there's additional funding we find after the consensus revenue or whatever it is, we usually do another supplemental budget.
Mid-year budget.
That's the mid-year budget, and then we can throw some more stuff in.
Yeah. So we're hearing from folks that are upset about that not making it into the final budget, and there's conversations about do we put it in a future budget. Maria, do you have your hand up?
Well, I hate to sound like the Republican in the room, but isn't this how it's supposed to work, right? Dems have this power, Republicans have this power, and we fight it out, and then we come up with a solution, right?
Ideally, yes, in May.
Yeah.
Right,
June.
6 months ago.
Yes.
Well, but that's where their power came from, was being able to stall it. By stalling it, didn't they in fact end up with more than they had, you know?
Oh, I think they ended up with
I think they ended up with less.
Like she
Yeah.
was, like the budget is like 90% what the Senate passed anyway. They
Yeah.
didn't get much.
So, I think really what this is, and this is a Myron Fraserism, don't strain too hard to find logic where there is none.
That's right.
Well, but I mean, I believe in the system.
Yes,
And
yes,
how it's
yes.
supposed to work, and truth comes through conflict, and
Yes. I believe
can't
that
we all just get along?
that the speaker wanted to present himself as a strong man, as a Trump, acquaintance, a Trump, ally.
The system needs to be blown up.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
But all the while, students were being told October 1st, no meals. Medicaid recipients were being told you're out of luck. I don't think that creates a lot of stability at the kitchen table for folks that have to make real big budget decisions in their home. And that's where, yes, at the end of the day, we passed a budget that has many things we can be proud of, and that's the fourth category. We're on category 1. But yeah, I would say the process does create instability, and people who don't know where the next, really have to stretch their paycheck, or even state employees. State employees, some are paid well, but some are these are jobs where folks are proud, and they work in in state parks, and they don't get paid a lot, and they work paycheck to paycheck, and they didn't know if they were going to have a job the first week of October.
So we believe in the process. Are there ways, and again, we're still in category 1, the process, are there ways to tweak and improve the process that we can look at, that would still give us?
Yes, get a new Speaker of the House. That would tweak the process perfectly.
Does the process itself need to be tweaked?
I don't think we needed to do it like this. I don't think this was necessary. I don't look back and reflect and think, oh, this was the best budget process that we've ever had. I think this is the worst budget process we've ever had.
So do we tweak the process, or do we concentrate on tweaking people?
I'm going to add a 5th category
Schedule.
of transparency in the budget. That's probably a win that came out of this. So we'll come back to the 5th category. So categories 2 and 3, and I know I'm making this up on the fly, are roads and marijuana, which Rep. Steckloff did a very good job of explaining, but I kind of want to marinate a little bit more, because as you know, we have underfunded our roads for many, many years, and the result is, your broken wheel, your car repairs, the pothole that you drive over every day. So 10 years ago, when I served in my first term in the Michigan House of Representatives, it was identified that we need a consistent revenue of about $2 billion more every single year. So we need $2 billion more in every budget to invest in our roads. And the Republicans controlled the Michigan legislature then, and they came up with a plan that was $600 million in future cuts, their favorite thing, and $600 million in raising our registration. Remember, our registration went up 10 years ago, and the gas tax went up 10 years ago. So they really only raised $600 million, because that $600 million in cuts never materialized. So by putting $600 million more in roads, when you need $2 billion more in roads, it doesn't make the roads better over a longer period of time. It makes the roads worse over a longer period of time. So 10 years later, we still have a lack of road funding, and the result is what you see. So
And now it's like $3 to $4
now,
billion shy.
So as you know, Governor ran on Fix the Damn Roads, and there's been some false hope and false starts, but there's never really been a plan to put more money into the roads. She did a bond. That is the reason that 696 has been a mess. That's been funded through a bond, but the payment's going to come due. And so she and the legislative leaders really said, we need to come up with the money to fix the roads. at long last, what is the new revenue that is going to fix the roads?
Does that even matter when the state of Michigan allows trucks to have such?
That's part of the equation.
That was part of the ones.
Yep, you're right, you're onto
Yes,
something.
yep.
So,
I can fill you in on what happened with that.
so back in like, what, March?
March.
Rep Steckloff and I were at a meeting with the governor where we laid out, she had a binder, I just had words, but laid out 12, 13, 14 ideas of where you could collect revenue that wouldn't hurt working folks to fix the roads. The thing that I've been pushing for so long, that spoiler alert did not make it into the final budget, is we should be increasing the revenue on iGaming and sports betting and all of these online betting games
Yeah.
that you play on your phone, on the companies that run those things. Back when this first was implemented in about 2019, 2020, this is a new thing in Michigan, the taxes that these companies pay are woefully low. And even Ohio, Republican-led Ohio said, you know what? We're increasing taxes on iGaming. And they raised about another $200 million in revenue to Ohio. We could raise another $200 million or more. So that was one of 14 ideas. I mean, Rep. Steckloff had a binder of ideas. Matt Hall, the Speaker of the House, said it's marijuana. That's it. No other discussion. It's going to be marijuana. It's not going to be sports betting. It's not going to be, what are some of the other ideas?
We had rental cars till almost the very end.
It's not gonna
rental
be-
cars brought in like $230.
It's
I mean
not-
$320. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's not going to be increasing
Heavy trucks.
trucks.
Heavy trucks.
So that was one of the ideas. Matt Hall literally on one of the last days of the budget said, I will shut down this government if we don't increase taxes on marijuana. So a bunch of folks in the marijuana industry, which again is a new emerging industry in Michigan, and whatever your feelings are on marijuana, it is regulated, it is tested, so that there's no black market of you don't know what you're using. It is tested for metals, it is tested for toxins. The marijuana here in Michigan is safer than having an illicit market. And so we want to have a regulated market, we want to have this industry. It supports some 40,000 jobs here in the state of Michigan. And this tax, which was an increase on the tax by 24% within the industry, that's a lot to take. And that was in Rep. Steckloff's bill, and it was a lot to take. So I'm kind of bleeding into category number 2, or 3 I guess, so we have acknowledged that is a big price to pay for this one industry to raise the revenue to fix our roads. So what else can we do to help make this industry thrive? I'm in charge of a committee in Lansing that of many things deals with marijuana regulation. So we are trying to ease some of the regulation, the rules on how they operate, so that this industry can still thrive while coping with the 24% tax. So 2 of the things that we're working through, and I know this is a lot, but this is all tied together, is number 1, we want to have a pause in licensing in Michigan. We are oversaturated with marijuana businesses. There's some communities where it's like every corner.
Yeah.
And a community has the ability, if they wish, to grant an unlimited amount of licenses. And some communities have it really, straight and narrow, and other communities have gone buck wild. Especially the border communities with Indiana, which doesn't have legal marijuana. They have lines up the road going from Indiana into those border communities, and it's disrupted the way of life in those communities. It also, because it's so oversaturated, the profitability of the product has plummeted. If some of you had purchased marijuana when it first came online in 2020, the product has plummeted 5 years later. It's a lack of profitability in this industry. So the industry has asked us, so we'll take questions. The industry has asked us, this is the association, which represents 400 entities in the Marijuana Association, can you put a cap on the licenses per community based on population? So we are exploring this idea of a cap so that there is not an oversaturation and so that the industry can stabilize itself. Yeah, there's a question in the back.
Okay, I'm not for marijuana. However, if the tax is for the state to make the money, then the state will get the money, even though the marijuana is oversaturated. However, for that actual entity, that would be a penalty for them, not on the state of Michigan, if I hear you correctly, because the new tax increases new businesses. So the more you have, the more you could tax those additional businesses. I understand the oversaturation, but maybe have some type of where they go elsewhere. Maybe recommend other locations that they could go, but it's a benefit for the state because of the way the budget is going, because we don't have other options. As you were stating that, I don't know who it was, but was only focused on marijuana. So if that's the only focus in the way to increase the budget, I would think we would want to increase the amount of entities. Again, I'm not for it, but just for us to gain that money so we can utilize it in other
I see what you're saying.
in other ways.
I hear what you're saying. This could be a whole economics class. I hear what you're saying. But essentially, we're raising taxes on the marijuana industry to put into roads. And they said, you know, you're going to make this unprofitable industry even more unprofitable, because how are we going to operate with this tax? We're going to either have to pass it on to our customers, we're going to have to absorb it ourselves. They were asking essentially for stability in the industry, because every new license, you know, rewrites the market. And we heard arguments that, like, let the free market decide. Let the free market, however many licenses, however they operate, let the ones that can rise to the top succeed, and let the ones, that's the free market. But in Michigan, we don't have a free market around marijuana. It is not a free market. It is regulated, it is licensed, it is detailed on how you can operate here in Michigan. There is no free market on marijuana. So this industry was saying, let us catch our breath. Let us stop dealing with another license, another license, another license. Let those who are license holders now catch their breath, stabilize the industry, better understand what the regulated market can sustain in terms of pricing. So if you want us to eat this 24%, you're going to have to let us figure out how this industry can stabilize. So that was kind of the discussion of pairing them both together. I hear what you're saying.
Totally hear what you're
The
saying.
industry had asked for this. Yeah.
You made a passing statement a minute ago about if I want to rent a car, I can't go down the street and some guy says, hey, you want to rent a car? But with marijuana, having participated in this for many years, legally and mostly illegally, you could buy weed almost any place. You went to a lot of high schools in Michigan. Some of the kids that I work with, they say, you walk in on first hour, by third hour, you got 6 bags of pot waiting for you. Because with all the taxation and everything, you're creating an illicit market where an illicit market hopefully would not be. But you can't do it with cars or other kinds of products. They're not out there on the street selling, but drugs in general are out there a lot. That's an issue that concerns me as a therapist with kids who are getting involved, not just with marijuana, but they're getting involved with other things that is creating stress on the police system, stress on the court system, stress on the people who are trying to help these people in recovery.
And I'm sorry I'm monopolizing, but
No.
this is all in my committee right now. Because Michigan has such a well-run agency, Michigan has such the rules have been adhered to, the licensure has been tweaked and hopefully improved. We actually have less of an illicit market than other states. And the product that is sold here is tested, it is safe, it doesn't have heavy metals in it, you know what's in it. So I'm going to put a pin in this, but the way we have regulated marijuana in Michigan has made it so there is no issues with an illicit market, that it is accessible. I don't know that we need it on every street corner. I don't know that we need everyone to have every community to have unlimited licensing. But the way that it is right now, it is so accessible for folks that we have actually seen a reduction in the illicit market here in Michigan. So that brings the policy point number 2. Little did you think you'd learn about hemp here, talking about the state budget. But the federal government several years ago said, hemp is this. It has a broad definition for hemp. So now there are these synthetic hemp products that are not marijuana. They're not cannabis. They still have THC in them. They're not cannabis products, so the cannabis is what is regulated in Michigan. The federal government has had this broad definition of hemp that even these synthetic hemp products that are laced with THC that will get you just as high as cannabis, they are legal here in Michigan. They're legal in every state that doesn't regulate them.
Yeah, they are.
You can get them in the gas station. It's Delta 9, Delta 8. It's all these strains of hemp that you can get in the gas station, you can get in the corner store. I mean, just go, they're being sold while not being regulated or tested here in the state of Michigan. That's an illicit market that we need to go after. So there are other bills in my committee that would regulate hemp like cannabis. You have to have it tested. You have to have a license. They can only be sold in certain places. It cannot be sold in the gas station. So what we're trying to do is regulate the hemp market the same way that we regulate the cannabis market and bring in tax revenue from hemp and hopefully bring more revenue into the state to fix our roads and maybe even alleviate this 24% that's now on the cannabis. So those
what would the tax be on the hemp?
we haven't found, I don't think, the final answer on that, but we are trying to regulate hemp, which is now wild, wild west in Michigan, the same way that we are regulating cannabis and testing it and taxing it so that we can get even more money in for roads and perhaps even reduce that 24% on cannabis that the industry is up in arms about.
That is the ultimate goal, is to bring it down.
So we got from roads to cannabis and marijuana. Let's talk about the wins, unless there are more questions on that. This is all that we've been dealing with for the last 30 days. It's crazy. So let's talk about the wins.
I thought there'd be a lot more questions about marijuana, and the road funding.
Do you want to talk about some of the wins here?
I mean, we got huge wins. So as I was saying, with some of the things we got in return with that, with the wholesale taxes, we got. When I say this, I'm only talking about state dollars because you're going to ask why our SNAP benefits not coming from the federal government starting October 1st. So we got Medicaid backfill, which was about $1 to $2 billion. So the Medicaid and the SNAP benefits, we got all that funding backfilled through some of these taxes.
Medicaid, which was cut and restricted from the one big bill, we have saved that here in the state of Michigan. We have protected from the harshest of federal cuts.
Yeah, that's, so we were dealing with some major cuts from the one big beautiful bill. Medicaid was one of them, SNAP was one of them. So we got those two backfilled. And then the huge one is the corporate income tax. Mm-hmm. So Trump slashed that. Into Michigan alone, that was about $1 billion just in the corporate income tax.
A gift to our most profitable, our most wealthiest corporation entities. A gift in that one big bill.
So we did this thing called decoupling. And long story short, the new way you do your taxes through your corporate taxes, it took away one of the sides which made it cheaper. Anyway, I don't even know how to explain this one. I don't try to figure out how to explain
We restored the tax.
We
restored the tax and now we're collecting the money. So whereas the federal government gave a big break to our wealthiest corporations, we have restored it as a state tax, and now we are recouping that money.
Yeah, the business industry obviously was not happy,
But
but they knew it was coming.
They're coming out neutral. They had a cut from the federal, and now it's restored on the state level. So they're still coming out neutral on this.
Just tell me if I'm summarizing it correctly. It sounds like the federal government had a tax structure for corporate income tax. We were either taking a percentage of it or copying it in Michigan. You've severed our connection to the federal system and replaced it with the state level tax. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, that is a fair summary.
I'm going to use that at my next coffee hour. That's
And,
a really good way
and
to
I will say
explain it,
this,
Calvin.
I will say this,
I get two of the weeks.
our Republican majority in the House fought this kicking and screaming and we still were able to ensure that there was, we restored this, what could have been a really harsh cut to our budget, that still is able to provide, services that we depend upon.
Yeah, we had a fun day. It was a random Thursday when the budget should have been done, and we put forth 3 tax increases. 3 tax increases, and we got all the Republicans to vote for it, because that's how desperate the situation was in Michigan.
Yep.
I think some of the biggest wins are in education budget. We got huge increases to the per pupil foundation allowance. It went up about $400 and something. Places like your Bloomfield, Birmingham, Farmington, and Southfield school districts, they were held harmless. So the foundation allowance that we did last term, there was a MIPSERS replacement. We made sure, because we didn't do that with the MIPSERS replacement, that's the retirement side, we put those dollars back in. It's in a different section of the budget if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, but we restored that foundation allowance and huge increases, about $400 and something per pupil. Huge. Free breakfast and lunch, once again. We got our mental health funding back. We got our categorials. So what they did is in the education budget, there's these things called categoricals. And each category has like a different thing tied to it. So autism is one of them. So that's your mental health, let's say your school resource officers, your safety. Those are some of the big ones. Originally, the Republicans zeroed all those out and put it into a per pupil allowance, which was still $300 less than what we got. So not only did we restore all the categoricals, we even increased the per pupil allowance. So a huge win. When I say the Democrats won the education budget, we won the education budget. So we had a huge win there. Now I will tell you, we are going to be facing a problem soon, and that is with some of our school aid dollars. The general fund dollars are going down. Our school aid dollars are going up. So we have a very healthy school aid dollars. So something we should be very happy about. Our school aid dollars are very strong.
And I want to pause right here, because we speak such
inside
government, and I'm guilty of it too. There's 2 budgets. When we talk about the budget, there's 2 budgets. There's the K through 12 budget, and there's everything else. That's your health, that's your roads, that's your local municipalities, that's departments, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State. So general budget is everything but education.
So general budget, not looking good. Education budget, looking great. So this year, in particular, we kind of rated that school aid dollars. And I know you're looking at me because how do you rate it if it's a restricted fund? So in that education budget, you also include higher education. The state constitution in Michigan says that school aid dollars can also be used for higher education. So when we talk about rating, what they do is they throw all those school aid dollars into higher education, and they take it, so that frees up general fund dollars for the other departments. But even with that quote-unquote raid, we had huge wins in our K-12. We had huge wins in higher education. We're going to be continuing free community college. So anyone who graduates right now, eligible for free community college in the entire state of Michigan. We also put another $330 million into our flagship program, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. So students going to 4-year institutions are eligible for $5,500 a year. It is income-based, but over 70% of students in the state of Michigan qualify for that. So we're making higher education more affordable now than this entire century. So we had huge wins in the education budget. Now moving to the other budgets, that's where some of our losses come from. And that is because we have a huge hole in the general fund dollars. Like I said, $3 billion from the federal government, that had to come from our general fund dollars. So a lot came from our general fund dollars. With this roads program, we broke it up into a few different ways to come up with that $2 billion. One is a gas tax swap. We got rid of, the governor gave up her economic, I'm sure you've heard about SOAR, strategic readiness thing. It's about 500. I'm getting way too in the weeds.
I'm already in the weeds.
I could, yeah, we're gonna answer questions, or Jason, go through
Yeah.
your transit. I'm sorry.
Because
Like,
that actually is a good segue into, as we were talking about SOAR. And so last term,
I cannot get it together.
I chaired our Economic Development and Small Business Committee. And one of the proposals, how I think about economic development in the state is people and talent. And it is how can we invest in those things. And so I put together a proposal of using the corporate income tax to fund housing, to fund placemaking, and to fund transit. And that used, and it also would go into the SOAR fund. You take corporate income tax and you put it into the SOAR fund, and the SOAR fund was used to also incentivize businesses to come to the state. And that proposal didn't go anywhere. But this term, we have eliminated that fund for incentivizing businesses to come to the state, and we have now used that to fund roads, and amongst other things. And in that road proposal, there is a transformational transit fund that we have started. It is $335 million over 5 years. It is for transformational projects that we hope will attract dollars from the federal level as well to really kickstart transit here in the state. And it's one of these things that also we're not really talking about, because we actually had a number of great wins. But this is something that if we do it right, we can really have transformational transit projects. We all want that rail system to go through the state, that Detroit to pick your city in Michigan, Detroit to Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor to Traverse City. There was a proposal for Detroit to Toronto. Like, there's all these things that we would love to have. And I think this transit fund is something that could kick that off. It's something I'm very excited about, and I hope that we are able to continue to invest in it, because it's something that we can really use to attract dollars from the federal government. And they are still, I was a little nervous when this new administration started this year, and I was like, what is the Federal Department of Transportation going to look like? Are they even going to want to invest in transit? But they still are. There's a $5 billion grant out there right now for transit projects, but one of the things you need typically is a match. You need to be able to show that you can continue to fund this. And this is something that we weren't able to get it through last term, but we, in a way, have found a way to be able to fund major transit projects. So, something I'm very excited about.
included in that, because you touched on housing, we have a substantial amount of dollars going towards affordable housing as well. So each year, I believe it's about $100 million goes into affordable housing.
Yes.
Not that I don't love listening to about the budget and what happened last year, but tell us, we're church ladies here. So we want to talk about where you are with the things that you're doing for trafficking or to prevent trafficking, and what's the likelihood of that. I know that there's something about, yes, raising the age of the women and boys who would be protected. How does that look?
So our colleague, Representative Kelly Brain, she actually has a human trafficking package that she worked on last term, and it was just introduced this term. And I think Rep. Steckloff is looking it up to see the aspects of that. But it is something that we are definitely addressing and trying to address at the state level, kind of filling some of the holes. Because here in Southfield, certainly when I was serving on city council here in Southfield, that was something that was a major issue that we had to address, especially with the number of highways that go through the city, as well as the number of hotels that we have. And there is a lot of things that we were trying to address then on human trafficking, making sure there's training, for example, for hotel workers so they know the signs, they know where to go. That was something that our former county commissioner, now current Southfield City Clerk Janet Jackson, that she actually worked on at the county level. I don't have it, of course, in front of me, but we can definitely get you the list.
Raising the age, I think, was the big one. So I hope that you all hold the line on that one from 16, I think it goes to 18 on the proposed legislation, which you're looking at, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at parts of it. I'm gonna have to get the full, I'm only pulling up what we fully did already. But a lot of it is, you know, strengthening the tools for the prosecution. There's safe harbor protections for minors. There's a lot. I want to say it was like a 13 bill package.
Yeah,
I'm gonna meet with Representative Breen before we leave. I'll make sure to give you my card,
Okay.
so I can get the full package for you. It was just reintroduced.
Yes.
Okay, and we're very interested in that.
That's
Okay.
wonderful because it's going through the House.
Okay.
Yeah.
The more voices that we can have advocate for these things, the better the prospects
And
are of
that's
having it
what we
pass.
can do.
That's
We want to keep you
wonderful.
in this
Thank you.
fold. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
I think it's up in committee. Was it up in committee last week?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure.
We'll connect. We'll get contact info.
Okay.
I want to answer one last question from Maria about what can we reflect on this budget process that was a big win. So you see the normal spending, big stuff on roads, big stuff on Medicaid, big stuff on education. There are opportunities for us to get special projects in the budget. In years past, Jason and I have gotten money to repave and redo Mount Vernon. In this year's budget, Rep. Steckloff and I got money for a really dilapidated Bloomfield fire station.
And we got money for Lathrop Village.
Well, yeah, but like
water
the village's
infrastructure.
water systems, perfect example. Those are called grants. Those are not ongoing line items, they're one-time only grants.
Is that like earmarks?
Exactly
Federal
right,
funds?
exactly right. Those are earmarks. And so what we have done is we've put transparency in these earmark projects so that on the front end, a legislator has to declare, here's my earmark that I am putting in the budget. Lathrop Village Water, Mount Vernon in Southfield, Fire Station in Bloomfield, so that the public knows on the front end what is going to be in this budget. Because for too many years, too many things got snuck in the budget at the last minute and nobody knew it was there. You've probably seen headlines of this one nonprofit that got all this money and they were paying for like $9,000 coffee pots and coffee makers. That was a result of a state grant that was slid into the budget at the last minute. So Speaker Hall has pushed for this. I have also pushed for this for a very long time, that we are going to now have more transparency on the front end. That as a lawmaker says, this is the grant that I'm putting in the budget, you all know what it is before the budget passes.
Does that apply to this year's budget?
It does.
Yeah.
Every earmark had a hearing. Every earmark had a public hearing. So of the things that we pushed for, I got a grant to Lighthouse in Pontiac. They are expanding their emergency housing and homeless services, and we got them money in this state budget. We worked together on this new fire station in Bloomfield. The one at Maple and Telegraph is woefully out of date and needs serious repairs, and we worked with Bloomfield Township.
It's like an emergency situation.
We worked together on Lathrop Village.
Yeah. $1.1 million for water infrastructure. This is actually in addition to funding that we got last year. Also on, I mean, this is certainly not unique to Lathrop Village, but I mean, just around the state, there is a number of issues with infrastructure, particularly when it comes to things that are below the ground, things that you can't see. You know, we have in Lathrop Village, it's all like almost 100-year-old water system, and it was creating issues of getting water potentially to residents, especially during emergencies. Like, you know, if there was a fire, there was a concern that the water may or may not come out. And so we got funding to help alleviate some of that.
And so every year we go through a budget, and there are items in the budget that are ongoing funding every year. But when Lathrop Village comes to us and say, we got a big problem and a big expense, we can advocate for that. Bloomfield has been pushing for this fire station, we can advocate for it. I took a meeting with Lighthouse. Lighthouse came to me and said, here's what we want to do to alleviate homelessness in Pontiac, and I believed in that mission and was able to get money to fund that. So those are earmarks for special projects in our district that we can fight for. Now we're requiring more transparency on the front end to make sure that you know what they are. You know if something looks shady, it can be called out on the front end rather than reading about the $9,000 coffee maker in the newspaper on the back end. Yeah. Are there any other questions? It does not have to be budget related.
It's not budget related.
All right.
But in the hour it took me to get here, the Court of Appeals has agreed that the 9 bills that were
Yes.
passed last year have to go to the governor.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So yes. All right. So. Yes. Yes. All right. So this is a really important thing. So at the end of last year, again, we had Democratic control of the House and Democratic control of the Senate and Democratic control of the governor's office. The Republicans took majority of the House in the November election in 2024. So it was like the last stand of bills that a Democratic-controlled legislature could pass. We passed hundreds of bills in December as a result. They took a while to get processed through the system, so much so that it lingered into the new year. And when the Speaker of the House, a Republican, Matt Hall, came into power, there were 9 bills that didn't quite make it past the process, and the Speaker of the House said, stop, we're not sending these to the governor. Even though they were passed in the House, they were passed in the Senate, it is a democratic process outlined in our Constitution, that's how a bill makes it to the governor's office. Matt Hall said, I'm the new speaker, and these last bills that didn't quite make it through the clerical work, I am not sending to the governor. So many of them, I mean, Rep. Steckloff has several bills in the package. It deals with allowing our corrections officers to have retirement benefits and get into the retirement system.
Huge thing for teachers.
Talk about the ones for teachers too.
It's called an 80-20. So we knew back then that health insurance prices were going to skyrocket this year, and they already have skyrocketed. So there was a bill that said, so for like public schools, they would need to pay 80% of the health care costs, and then the individual would pay 20%. City employees, so many people. This is huge. This is huge. So the health care is now going to be covered at an affordable rate for so many of our public workers. We had some museum authority ones on there. Those were mine. That was to protect the Charles H. Wright Museum, as well as protecting the Detroit Historical Society Museum. So those now can finally start to move forward with their protections, because it has to go on the, there was a lot of that.
So there were 9 bills that were lawfully passed by the legislature that the Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House, said, I'm not sending to the governor. So earlier this year, the Senate sued the House and said, you cannot hold up these bills. And it's worked its way along through the court system, and earlier today, the Court of Appeals has directed the House to send those bills to the governor's office.
The Court of Appeals says it's in the Constitution and he can't
Yep.
review.
Oh my gosh, I need to tell my staff. I'm freaking out over here. Yeah.
Now,
Glad
the House could appeal it to the Supreme Court, and then they have to go through that process and wait for them to rule, but.
They could also just not take up the appeal.
Yes, the Supreme Court cannot take it up.
Yeah, so there's, I think, like a 42-day window for the House to respond, and we'll see next steps. But this was a definitive, decisive ruling that the House cannot hold up bills that rightfully pass through the legislature. Yes. So yes, Jen, that was very exciting. Yeah.
You can't tell.
Yeah, Greg.
I know that it's funded by the federal government, but it's administered through the state. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about SNAP.
Yes. So because there's a federal government shutdown, and because Donald Trump has decided not to tap into emergency resources that could fund SNAP for the month of November, our state health department was told by the federal government that SNAP is not going to be funded for the month of November. Even if they come to a budget deal tomorrow, the next day, the federal government has said we are not funding SNAP for the month of November. It's shameful. You know, there are people who really depend on these. And it's not just, you know, it's not just in one party or another. Of the 30 counties in Michigan with the highest amount of SNAP recipients, 26 of them are rural counties. And so there were already SNAP cuts in the one big bill that Republicans and Democrats in the legislature said, we're going to find the money to fill in those holes. But the federal government is now telling us, regardless of all that, you are not getting SNAP benefits run through your state system in the month of November. It's going to really hurt people. It's something like 1-point-something million people in Michigan, including 500,000 children, including 40,000 service members, veterans and service members, will not be receiving SNAP benefits here in the state of Michigan as a result of this lingering shutdown, Trump shutdown in Washington. Yeah.
More fun ending on the night.
Yeah, is there a better question that we can end on? All right, so we will, do you have another question, Greg, or no?
No, just.
All right, so we will resume this next month. This Rep. Steckloff says she usually does a budget PowerPoint.
It's easier to understand.
It's easier to understand. I mean, you know, we're very excitable about finally passing a budget, so we probably threw a lot at you. We tried to make it as explainable as possible. We will follow up with you on the trafficking.
I already got the information, so.
And so, so we will either do this again. I think are we doing the first Monday in the month in Bloomfield? Usually we do the first Monday of the month at the Bloomfield Library without Jason because he doesn't represent Bloomfield. And then we do the last Monday of the month here at the Southfield Library. So if you haven't yet signed up for our email blasts, that's how you get information. But no, I mean, we appreciate your attentiveness. And we'll see you next time.
Appreciate you all.
Yeah, I gotta work on my delivery.
No, you did great.